as you're pulling together your business. Some of you may have already done that, but this is very important if you're trying to get into this sector. Approaches to raising capital. Now, we would have to do a whole, which we probably will, in the future date, a whole series around how you do that. Alma will talk about the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity has also right now a loan program out. It is not credit-based for those who are, you won't get awarded until you are, awarded a license, but you can still apply now. So that's up to $250,000, right? Networking also connects to so this is not a banked industry. So this is really tough, and this is a complex industry, so I'm not trying to blow smoke in that way. Because you're gonna have to figure out where you can go raise this capital to open a dispensary, to open a craft grow. It's not cheap, it's capital intensive, right? So I think this is where the racial wealth inequality rears its head. So you have to really think about how and who you can access that kind of money, because you can't go to a bank. So that means that private equity, venture capitalists, or private high net worth individuals are the ones driving this sector right now in Illinois and across the country. Understanding the plant, respect the plant. So I know that everyone is looking at the money, but for those of us who come from a space where we respect the plant, there's a history, in particular for indigenous and African people, know the history of the plant. Very important. It is the one thing that kind of binds all of us as in the human village, right? And so respecting that is going to be and understanding the history and the context that gets into the criminal justice aspects, knowing that is going to help be a really good way for you to think about approaching in your business plan as well. Who's your audience, who's your segment, but knowing that plant history is important and what the plant can do. There's 125 cannabinoids in it. And so it's still very early on. There's still a lot of research that needs to be done. We still need to advocate for it to actually be decriminalized at the federal level. So there's a lot of moving parts, but it's an exciting industry. Equity provisions. So everyone's talking about social equity. What does that mean? I was part of a coalition called Pure that helped expand the language in the bill, advocates who went to Springfield. We did the door knocking all over on the west side, on the south side. Look, this is going to impact us. So getting people's records expunged is a great thing. But also creating new, as the mayor said, new wealth is also going to be important. So when we go to reauthorize this bill in 5 years, we're not looking at the same set of actors who continue to benefit, right? So that means you have to be really smart about thinking about how to move this forward. And just real quickly in closing, the ancillary products and services that you can do in this business is also where many people, so if you don't have all that capital, then you can also look at this list of, which is really great, science, research, and technologies. That's what this business really is. That's the backdrop of this business. Educational programs and professional disciplines, practice of the law, so people who are lawyers, paralegals, all of that industry will grow. Medical uses, specialty practices in particular, those who are going to use the plant, both hemp or CBD, CBG, and cannabis. I'm rushing through this real quick. So agricultural and processing equipment and technology is a huge part of the sector. So understanding those equipment, so it's a lot to learn. It's way bigger than you just opening a dispensary. The ancillary products and services, so security, packaging, consulting, all of these would be areas for you to have and build a business around. And then also technology. So also the agri-tech, understanding the plant, points of sales, systems for dispensaries, all of these are unique opportunities for ancillary businesses that are going to be needed to support this new sector. So I want to thank you guys for this short presentation, and I'll stick around if people do have questions. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Anton. So now what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to introduce the rest of the panelists, and then a brief description of who I am and what my experience is in the industry. and we're going to have a conversation more around kind of some questions dealing with what it takes to start a business, some key things to think about, and then we're going to leave time for. I'm going to introduce the rest of the panelists so you can know who's speaking to you. We're going to have a discussion that is going to address some of the topics that we think that you may want to know in starting a business, and then we're going to leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm just going to kind of go down the line, introduce them, and ask each of the panelists to kind of give us a brief description of their background. So you've met Anton. So sitting next to Anton is Jeff Cox from the Illinois Department of Agriculture. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Can you hear me? All right. Yeah, my name's Jeff Cox. I'm the Bureau Chief of Medicinal Plants. Not so much all medicinal anymore, is it? We were founded back in about 2013 or 14. Our bureau was when the medical cannabis pilot program was put into effect. Since then, we have added the industrial hemp program and now the adult use cannabis program. So it is our bureau that's responsible for all the inspections of basically everything but dispensaries. We do all the cultivators. We will do all of the craft growers, the infusers, and the transporters. We are responsible for accepting those applications. They are available right now online at our website. We will be responsible for the grading of those, the awards of those. Then once those new organizations are up and running, we will be having inspectors come in on a weekly basis to check things out, make sure everything's on the up and up, and that everybody's staying compliant. And then we're always there to help. We appreciate all the FAQs. Show of hands if you've submitted a question to agr.adultuse@illinois.gov. I'm surprised because we've gotten literally thousands of questions, and we are working diligently to get those answered right now. But go to our website, check those FAQs out. When we get to the Q&A, I want to throw this out there real fast. I have to be incredibly careful how I answer questions because not everybody that's applying is in this room. Not everybody that's applying will know that it's available online. So if I come off as being evasive or if it seems like I'm trying to avoid your question, it's not on purpose. I'm not trying to be rude. I just have to be super, super careful. So if I say, hey, go to our website, it's only because that's my only answer that I'm allowed to give. And it's because of the ethics laws and stuff. It's a good thing that I can't help individual people because it would give somebody a leg up. So I just want to make sure nobody thinks I'm being rude. But I think this is great. I think this is, I was downstairs a little while ago, and I mean, I don't know how many thousands of people are in there, but this is fantastic. So I'm really excited about the next 6 months to a year with this industry. So thanks for having me, and I'll be happy to answer questions as we go.
Thanks, Jeff. Sitting next to Jeff is Alma Tello, who was from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity.
Yes, good morning. Can everybody hear me back there? Yeah. No? Is that better? Okay, there you go. Getting personal with this mic. My name is Alma Tello. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. I'm one of the many bureaus within the Department of Commerce. I've been involved with the creation and implementation of the social equity programming that the state is offering. And particular to this room is the loan, the cannabis loan that we have. So this loan is available to social equity applicants. And we have an application live right now, but we are in the process of submitting or posting our uniform application for all other licenses, which includes craft grow, infuser, and transporter licenses. We have, so currently there's about $24.3 million in the Cannabis Business Development Fund, and this is key to know because this is where the funding is coming from. So if you apply for a license, you can apply for a loan. Particular to these licenses that are available, the license applications that are available now, and as most of you, I hope, have been reading on what are the requirements from the Department of Agriculture, they do require a liquid acid component, and I just got confirmation from my bureaucrat colleague that you can provide a letter. So if you apply for a loan with DCO and you get a pre-approval letter, you can submit that with your application with Department of Agriculture as a liquid acid requirement submission as an exhibit. So as I said, we have our application live right now. We have let me give you our email. If you have any questions, you can email ceo.adultusecannabis@illinois.gov. You can also text right now, Cannabis Illinois, all one word, to 42828 to be added to our distribution list. And then once that application is live, we will disseminate that to everybody in our contact list. We also have an exhibit, a vendor exhibit booth downstairs with information about our loan. We also provide technical assistance workshops. We are in the process of planning those, and those will be available hopefully starting next week or sometime very early on in February. But I'm excited to be here since I've only been with DCO since July of last year. But it's been exciting from the moment I started. I've been helping to craft this very important programming and I'm excited here to support social equity applicants. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, yeah, okay. So text Cannabis Illinois, all one word, to 42828. 42828. Okay, it's pretty long. It's ceo.adultusecannabis@illinois.gov. Oh, and there's one more thing I wanted to add. This is actually pretty new. We have an angel tax credit that's available right now, and this is for new industries, which means that infuser and craft grow applicants can apply for this. This is a 25% income tax credit, and if you don't have to have the license to apply for this. So this is in another bureau. But if you want more information, you can email angelinvestment@illinois.gov. No, this is not a new industry. So this tax credit is only for new industries. So particular to cannabis, that would include craft grow and infuser. Thank you. Illinois.gov. We have a table downstairs. It's on the third row, I believe. We're right next to CHA.
We'll take
Thank,
questions.
thank,
I
you know,
could
we're
be
going to
available
save the
after.
questions for the end, if you will. Thank you very much. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name. And next to Alma is Jamil Taylor from Village Brands.
Yeah, it's tough to follow someone giving away money.
Sure is.
But I want to say thank you all for being here. This is a very, very diverse room, and I'm thankful for that. And so just thank you all for coming and attending. My name is Jamil Taylor. I got my start in cannabis roughly 2013. Prior to that, I was an investment banker, private equity, venture capital guy, who said, we would never touch or be at this place in cannabis. So I basically was one of the founding partners at Justice Grown, which is a cultivator here in Illinois. I became the first CEO, first black CEO of a New Jersey integrated cannabis company, first COO in our Pennsylvania dispensary business, as well as interim CEO here in Illinois. In 2019 of April, I joined Viola Brands, which is the largest African-American owned cannabis company. I saw a need to go after licenses, to have a brand along with social equity or a diverse set of ownership to go after licenses. So we've been successful at winning licenses in Maryland, cultivation, Missouri, processing, cultivation, and dispensaries. We have pending licenses in New Jersey, pending licenses here in Illinois. We're applying for craft grows, transportation licenses. And I hope that this panel today will help you all understand that this industry is just bigger than those kind of three verticals of cultivation, processing, and dispensing. It really is about doing what you do best today and finding a way to fit that into the cannabis space. So from that perspective, we really, really want that to be the message here. Because again, not everybody here is going to be a dispensary owner. Not everyone here can grow amazing cannabis. Not everyone here can infuse or be a chef with products. So again, how can you be a part of this industry without having that huge capital need, but still using your strengths to, obviously increase your business? So thank you for having me, and can't wait to kind of get started.
Thank you very much. And I'm Kevin, the moderator. I'm an attorney. I'm a corporate attorney, practiced law for 20 years plus, and I have the privilege of working with Jamil with Viola Brands, and that's actually how I was introduced to the industry. And to kind of piggyback on something that Anton said during his presentation, that it's a business, and it's a very sophisticated business, and that's actually how I was able to start working with the co-founder of Viola, was purely on a corporate standpoint. And again, the thing that kind of made me valuable to the team is because I'm a corporate finance lawyer, and the difficulties and the technicalities related to raising capital and honoring investor rights. But other than that, every year of cannabis is a dog year. So I've been working with cannabis for about 2 years, but it feels like I've been working for it my entire career. And with that, I'm going to ask a question and have our panel kind of attack it. And one of the first things that Anton talked about was kind of planning your business, planning your vision, and then identifying the people that you need to support you in driving toward that goal. So let me start with the first question, simply, what does a strong team look like? And I'll start with Jamil.
Yes.
A strong team is very important to this process. If you're applying for licenses, I've been very successful. I've applied for 14 processes and I've won 11 of them. And they're very, very tough to do. And the first thing I'll always tell anyone is you got to have a team, right? And if you don't have a team, you're not going to be successful in this industry because you need the best-in-class, real estate folks. Hello, Dina. You need the best-in-class, financial folks. You need the best-in-class attorneys, the best-in-class, operators, folks who have experience in this industry, folks who have experience in similar industries, pharmaceuticals, logistics. All those things kind of really matter. If you think you're going to just apply and just win by just, having you and your brother-in-law, your brother and your sister just kind of be a part of that team, that can be a part of the process. But again, look who you're competing up against. People in this industry in Illinois have been around for 5 years, which sounds like a short period of time, but some of the biggest companies in the entire space got their start here in Illinois. So now you're competing against those folks and those folks who work for those big companies who have the levels of experiences that you need to kind of get those points on an application. So the best thing I could say is start making relationships, contacting, networking. There's classes. There's tons of things you can do to learn about this industry, whether it's learning how to grow. There's literally workbooks and physical classes of how to grow a tomato plant, which can be used to learn how to grow cannabis. So using your resources is very, very important. And I would say that's kind of where you start. And then obviously, as you're going through the process, making sure you have everything that you need from corporate, finance, capital, real estate, all that stuff has to be in line before you can actually begin the process.
Thank you. Anton, do you have anything to add?
No, that was pretty good. I think, as a startup, I think it's also the dog years that's serious because there is just the sector is moving so quickly. So you have to have people on your team who are committed. Many of you all are going to be putting in sweat equity in this early stages. So a lot of your time figuring out how to devote that time and building a team of, like I said earlier in my presentation, curating your team that has these different kinds of experiences, people who have opened, know retail, customer service, legal, corporate, who have some kind of corporate banking or, come out of that world of knowing how to structure deals. It's just stuff that you're going to need to really have. And then understanding everything that's happening in the sector, who is, kind of making sure that the information that you have on your team in order for you to, as Jamil said, to apply, so you can know all of the rules and regulations. So you need someone on your team who's also a great writer. So these are things you want to curate so that you don't have to then pay for consultants to then do that as well. So just think about it in those terms. So if you don't, then you do have the resources, then you would have to fund that out to have somebody help you, and particularly in this application. And it is, as he said, this is, there is no guarantee. So everyone, it's an equal playing field. You have no idea, except maybe Jeff, who are on the other side, who are going to be grading, and determining how that happens in terms of who gets awarded. But everyone is putting forth, if it's $2,500, so also, bringing people who have money to your team. If you have even the smallest bit, it's going to be important to have that leverage in your team for even the kind of day-to-day stuff that you would need to kind of take care of.
Sure. So, Anton, you kind of alluded to something, and it sounds like some people have gone through the application process and some haven't, but you kind of alluded to kind of having team members being able to help substantively with the application and being able to leverage your team members as opposed to paying consultants to do that. I guess I like, Jeff, if you could kind of give an example or, you know, kind of explain some of the things where we would need kind of a substantive input. And then Anton, if you could talk about how you could find some of those particular people with that skill set that would be able to help with that substance.
Yeah, so, these applications, you have to remember it's a competitive process. I can only give away 40 craft grow licenses. I expect about 2,000 applications to come in. So keep in mind, it's incredibly, say that another 1,000 times, competitive. So I think the application writing process is the most important part at this stage. It needs to be well thought out. It needs to be well organized. It's all going to be anonymous. We will not know who's we're grading. We have a system in place that will make sure that there's no giveaway no giveaways, obviously, but there's nothing in the application for it's going to go through several sets of hands, and once somebody's done with it, they're never going to see it again, and somebody else will grade it. So we're going to have people go through and just skim it and black out if we accidentally left somebody's name in there, because you have to, anybody that's familiar with the application, you have to give us a redacted copy and an anonymous copy. We're going to go through it and make sure it is in fact redacted and anonymous, and if it's not, we're going to fix it and then pass it on to the next guy to do the grading. So, but it's not as simple as saying I'm gonna take marijuana seeds and put them in soil and they're gonna grow and I'm gonna sell it. It's so much more complicated than that. You have to have an agronomist, basically, somebody that really knows what they're doing. You've got to have somebody that understands the curing process. You've got to have somebody that understands the extraction process if you're going to be a craft grower, for example. Infusers, same thing. You can't just say, well, I'm gonna cover my M&Ms in cannabis oil and sell them. It's just much more complicated. How are you going to make sure that every M&M or every chocolate or gummy bear or whatever has the same amount of cannabis in it? Things like that oftentimes get overlooked, I think. So there's consulting companies out there. Some are charging what I would call fair amounts to help consult. Some are charging like $100,000 to help consult. So I can't stress enough how competitive this will be. But that being said, obviously I can only give away 40 craft growers, 40 infusers. No limit on transporters. If you get 75%, you get the transporter license. But if you don't get the license, that's okay. There will probably be more licenses down the road. I think, what's the statute max this out at on craft growers, 100 or something, or 100?
So that's right.
Is it 100? 100. So we're going to give more away, or award more. I shouldn't say give away. That's not the right term. But what I suggest is if you don't get one the first time, go work for one. Get in there, get the industry, start learning that base knowledge, because you may have been number 41. You don't know where you're going to end up in that tally. So learn everything you can, even if you don't get a license on this first go-around. But the application is, that's what matters right now. So take your time. You've got till March 16th to turn them in. We're accepting them down in Springfield at the Department of Ag building on the State Fairgrounds. We will also be accepting them at the Thompson Center downtown. So we're working out the logistics on that, because I don't have a desk in the Thompson Center. Department of Ag does not have any employees in the Thompson Center. So we're having to work with IDFPR and the governor's office to figure out how we're going to get this staffed. But there's that opportunity, so you won't have to come all the way down to Springfield. And we'll continue to provide details. If you show up on whatever day to turn your application in, we'll make sure you find the right room and get it turned in. That being said, we are not going to open a single application until after all the applications have been turned in. This is important because if history is any indication, sorry, I'm going way off topic, but I'm going. We start accepting applications on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Yeah, my wife is not happy that I'm going to be in Chicago on Valentine's Day. We stop taking them on Monday, March 16th at 5 p.m. If you are in line at 5 p.m., you can turn in your application. If you walk up to the line at 5:01, you're out. I'm sorry. I cannot accept it if you're not in line at 5. So keep that in mind. But also, you can turn them in any day in there. You don't have to wait till the 16th. because what happened with, I know with the dispensary licenses, I think they received something like 750 applications. 450 or 500 of them came in on the very last day. So this is a lot of paperwork and a lot of stamping and receipting, and it's really stressful for the state employees. So you don't have to wait till the last day. That's all I'm telling you. All right, thank you. That was a huge thing. I had to make sure I got that out.
No, we appreciate that. Let me ask another question. One of the things that Anton brought up, and I'm sure everyone has heard, is that this industry is a capital-intensive industry, and there's a limited pool of available investors or sources to get the capital that's needed. So let's start from a basic question. How does one determine how much capital they need?
Yeah. Well, there's... One, it goes back to what I talked about before, which is that determining where you're going to land in the space, in this industry. As I said before, a lot of people are focused because of the dispensary application, so there was a lot of attention to dispensaries, which take a lot, a lot of money to open. There's that security. Well, how many people applied in here for dispensary? So, yeah. So not that many. So that means that there are still a lot of people who are still coming into this. I think the slide is still up. I think that there's also a tremendous amount of opportunity to know and learn what some of the ancillary businesses are if you don't have access to that kind of traditional capital. And as I said before, I think the other way that you can think about getting into the space is hemp and industrial hemp, and in that space, because it's so similar in terms of the plant. And these companies are pretty much intersecting in that way. It's not as regulated as cannabis is. Those are also ways that I think that you can be really smart and savvy around, trying to find pools of capital. And until we get some relief around, there's some of our state representatives here. There are opportunities on the floor to think about how we can create at the state level, a public bank, something that alleviates until we have real guidance in the country around how, because we had the Safe Banking Act in D.C., it did not pass. So there's, I think right now it's going to be a state by state. And as this grows, in particular in this space, I could say this a gazillion times. When you talk about how many of these companies are starting, they're starting through friends and family as their first seed money. This is where you see the huge racial disparity. Because for many, and I can only speak from this point of view as a black man, that your network necessarily don't have $1 million to give to you right away. So you've got to be thinking about where there's some other points to get into the sector, and that could really be beneficial. Now, there are some pools, there are funds out there. So I would also say there are, great resources like ArcView is one that has a list of a lot of the kind of lenders. But again, these spaces are dominated mostly by private equity. So that means that they're majority all white men that are going to be funding. We've got Wanda James, who was just talking about, and if you have the experience as a business owner, because there are, I'm trying to condense everything because there's so many different ways that people can get it because everyone has a different experience. And if you do have that experience of, in her case, opening restaurants, having a network that can then fund these operations, that's another smart way to think about it as well.
So I was actually about to go ahead, add what you want to add, then I have a follow-up.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, so when we created the loan program, we wanted to be very intentional about who we want to benefit from this program. So our loan program is specifically for social equity applicants. So how many here know what is a social equity applicant? Okay, I didn't see enough hands, so I'll just give you guys a real quick 2-second. Who is considered a social equity applicant? So who qualifies? If 51% ownership and control of one or more Illinois residents who have lived in a disproportionately impacted area, and there's a map in DCO's website, you type in your address, and if it comes up in a blue area, you have lived in a disproportionately impacted area. You just have to have lived there 5 of the last 10 years. Okay, so that's one way. The other way is if you have been arrested for, convicted of, or adjudicated delinquent for cannabis-related offenses. And then there's more information that, to see what that requires. If you have a parent, your child, or a spouse that has been arrested for, convicted, or adjudicated delinquent for cannabis-related offenses, or if you are an employer and you have more than 10 full-time employees, and half of those employees meet those requirements that I just mentioned. So if you meet any of those requirements, you can apply for our loan. Now, we still have our typical underwriting process, but again, because we understood the typical barriers that Black and brown communities have when it comes to access to capital, we're not looking for credit. So if you have bankruptcies in your past, that's not going to be an issue applying for a loan. Collateral is not something that we're requiring. However, I do just want to mention that for the craft grow and infuser license and transporter, no, not the transporter, right? That doesn't have an infusing capital portion, no. For the infuser and craft grow licenses, there is a liquid acid requirement, which again, I just confirmed with my colleague, Jeff Cox, that if you apply for a loan with DCO and you're pre-approved and you've received a pre-approval letter, you can submit that with your application and as an exhibit of your financial requirement with Department of Agriculture. So the state understands the legislation, the intent behind the legislation, and our social equity loan program has been created to support social equity applicants and we have tried to remove the typical barriers when it comes to accessing capital, because we understand that a lot of our communities will go to Family First to receive funding. We also understand that there are a lot of funders that will try to take advantage of social equity applicants, and we want to help as much as possible. Unfortunately, the total amount in the Cannabis Business Development Fund it's limited. It's 24.3 billion as of yesterday. Million. 24.3 million as of yesterday. So that's the pot of money that we're using to support as many social equity applicants as possible. So our loan amount is limited. Consider it more bridge funding. There's a couple of other things that we look at that a typical lender will not look at. We want to know your story. How have you been impacted by the strict cannabis laws? We want to know your need for funding. Why do you need our money? Why is it that, are you having trouble finding funding elsewhere? That is not going to be a negative point for us. And then we also want to understand, do you know or are you able to stand up and operate a cannabis business? So we want to know if you're educating yourself in the process, who's part of your team, because we also, it's still a loan. It's still going to go through the underwriting process. So we also want to make sure that our investment in you, in the social equity applicant, we're trying to minimize the risk as much as possible and make sure that the applicant is able to pay us back, which will go back to the fund, which will then help other social equity applicants. So I just wanted to point that out, that when this loan program was created, it was created to support social equity applicants, understanding the many barriers there is to be part of this very lucrative but very labor and capital intensive industry.
Can I ask, are there any limitations on what the loan proceeds can be used for?
Yes, great question. So the loan should be used, is eligible to be used for not capital expenses. Actually, it's for operational expenses. So for the build out of your operation, you can pay staff in the meantime. You can buy inventory with this money. Unfortunately, you can't use it for capital expenditures, and we do have in our application what are eligible uses and which ones are ineligible. The other thing too, and again, to further support social equity applicants, because we understand that the moment you receive the money doesn't mean that you are selling and you are making money right away. We are giving our eligible borrowers a 1-year grace period. So your first payment will not be due until 1 year after the first disbursement.
Great, thank you very much. So 2 things. 1, we have 15 minutes left for Q&A. Second, the next panel will be held downstairs in the main hall. So I'm going to open it up to you for questions and answers. All right.
Okay, real quick, before we get to asking questions, just want to quickly tie you up and let you guys know that about 5 minutes before the 12:15 time of the next panel, please exit safely and carefully out these doors. We're going to try to get to as many questions as possible, going from side to side, okay? So there's about 10 minutes, actually, for Q&A. Starting with you, sir.
Eileen, párate. Is this on?
Yes.
Hello to the room here. I'll be super concise about my questions. This question specifically for Alma about social equity here. As you can see, Eileen, there's maybe 1,000 people in this room. We do have a candidate with a disability. I'm not sure if that your detailed application needs would relate to her needs, but in regard to social equity, obviously she's disabled. We have a lot of capital. Just kind of need some guidance in regard to how somebody with a disability can have a successful application for a dispensary for the next round, because the state's website is not disabled friendly for a blind person to be able to apply
So
friendly. So that's where we're at, and this is Eileen. Do you have a question? Thank you, guys. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, yeah, I guess my main concern was the lack of accessibility and calling telephone numbers and not getting a response, so.
Oh, so we do have a hotline, but I'll piggyback on what my colleague, Chef Cox said, that we also have a very, very small team. So I do apologize if you've contacted us and we haven't gotten back to you. I have a small team of 3 people. And it is a little challenging, and we do receive a very large volume of inquiries, phone calls, some drop-ins. So I do appreciate if you give us some time to get back to you. We try to provide as much information as possible on our website, so there is all the information that you can need. But I'm happy. I'll be here. I have a booth downstairs, and I'll be around as well if you have some very particular one-on-one questions.
Can you answer the disabled, the disability,
Oh.
and social equity?
Just to preface with the loan program, it is in the legislation, and it has to be for social equity applicants. So if you are a social equity applicant, based on the requirements I indicated, and that's posted on our website as well, you can apply for the loan. And then just a further check, the disbursement of the loan will not happen until the licensing agency, which is IDFPR or Department of Agriculture, has confirmed that you have received the license and that you are a bona fide social equity applicant. So if one of those two do not have, those two do not happen, we will not disperse the loan. So it is for social equity applicants.
So she is not a social equity applicant for the record.
You'd have to look at the rules.
Then
Yeah.
unfortunately, the loan would not apply for her because disability is not a requirement for the loan.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we have a question on this side.
Hey, how's it going? This question is for Jamil. So since you did the business from startup, from beginning to end, I have property in Mississippi. So I'm trying to groom it to get ready for when the laws do pass.
Yep.
Because as I said, Mississippi is a different ballgame there.
course.
So, in your honest opinion, how can I go about prepping myself as far as legally building that team? So when that time comes, because I'm interested in the hemp side of the business there.
Yeah.
How do I go about the steps and which direction would I have to go
That's
to move forward?
That's a great question, and I would tell folks, if you already have property or you have things kind of lined up for the next state that's coming online, I think 70% of the U.S. lives in a state that has some sort of medical cannabis regulation in place. So all the states are coming online eventually, right? I would say, for you, getting your property ready to go, making sure that you fit the right zoning, making sure your property is zoned potentially for hemp or cultivation or an ag. I would say that's probably the first step. And if it's not zoned, talking to your local representative to get it rezoned. That's very, very important, right? Zoning, are you by a school? Are you by a church? Are you by a playground? Those things are very, very important to understand. And I assume no, the answer is no. Yeah, exactly. That's the first step. I think the second step is, being an advocate, right? Speaking and actually talking to your legislators about having this be on the next bill or passing if it's a cannabis and THC kind of infused process. If it's a hemp process, you're literally able to do that with the rules and regs that are based in, the U.S. now. So that's the first thing. Learning and getting someone who knows how to grow hemp, okay? That's the next thing. This is a crop, right? If you grow indoor, you're limited for what you can and can't produce. It being an outdoor crop, if growing in Mississippi, you got to understand the things such as your weather, your humidity, your controls that control this environment. This is a very, very sensitive plant. It's called weed for a reason. You can plant it, it will grow, but you will not get the best medicinal value outside of the product. So what you need to do is understand someone who knows how to grow hemp in a similar climate. The challenge is that you go to Colorado or California, those folks are not familiar with Mississippi's weather, right? So understanding that, I would say having a team of farmers, right, who understand just how to grow in general. This is still agricultural in nature. So understanding fertigation, understanding irrigation, understanding humidity, temperature, soil control, how to control your environment if you're growing indoors. All of those things are very, very important. The next thing I would say is getting a lawyer, a really good lawyer. Because no matter what happens, if you end up growing THC products and if it's an outdoor crop, you're going to have a lot of people trying to shut that down or make sure that it's not viable. So having a proper legal team with you is very, very important. And then obviously capital and financing is important too. But right now I would start with the local representatives, make sure they're on board. If they're on board, then that's kind of the process you start to begin.
Okay, questions over here. One question is concerning the consulting companies and your guys' perspective on them. The companies that help you say that they'll accelerate and help you expedite your application process and help you get it straight away. What do you guys recommend? And then the other one is this gentleman.
Well, I was wondering about the financial portion of it. As far as, aside from the liquid asset requirement, is there any merit base to somebody that's got $5 million that can build out the proposed facility right now, or somebody that may have to refinance their house and their business and whatever to get that money after the approval of the license?
That sounds like a Jeff question.
Look at the rules.
I have to direct you to the rules. What I can tell you is every application will be graded independently of all others. And we just encourage everybody to provide the most competitive application possible. The requirement is, I don't care if you have a building today. When you apply, you have to give me a property, you have to give me some blueprints and things like that. I don't care if it exists today, but you have to be up and running within 6 months. That's, if you can prove that, then you should get the available points. If you say it's going to be 2 years before I'm up and running, then you're not going to get the license. I can pretty well guarantee you that. But I mean, we're only looking at, we have the requirements that you have to have X amount for capital, depending on which license you're going for. Excuse me. Above and beyond that, I can't really answer it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's tough to answer that one. I'm sorry.
I can give some opinion on that. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, you got to put the best foot forward. This is an A-plus application. 40 slots for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 applications. So put your best foot forward. If you have capital to show the capital. This is not one of those things where you have to check the box and meet the requirement. You have to over-exceed the requirement. Every question is asked. I look at every question on a 0 to 10 scale. If I don't answer the question on a 10, then I'm probably not going to win that question. So that's kind of how you have to think about it. From a standpoint of consultants, there are a lot of consultants out here in this room, in this building, who will tell you and sell you a dream, and make you pay crazy prices to go out and win or try to apply for a license. First question I always ask is, how successful have you been in competitive licensing in the past? Because many consultants will say, I've won licenses in Colorado and in California. To no offense in Colorado and California, a lot of those application processes sometimes are just signing paperwork, right? They're not graded on a competitive process in a limited license state, or it's just based on zoning. So be very careful of those kind of predatory consultants. I will say best-in-class consultants are in the six-figure range.
That's right.
It's just, that's the reality of it. These are very expensive to apply. These are very competitive. And if you had a competitive skill set that no one else had in this room, you would charge a crazy price for it. So just be very mindful of that. But typically there's obviously deals and structures you can do to kind of, mix in some equity, maybe mix in some debt, maybe lower that, get that price down a bit for you. But it is very competitive on that note.
And I'll add to that again, and kind of talk about forming a team. Is you kind of need someone on your team's got to have some industry experience, and that person should vet your potential consultants.
We've got a question over here about investing. If you're a resident who's not exactly in the industry but have money to invest, what opportunities are there to invest your funds?
Before you go on to the next question, I just want to mention that we're going to keep going with the Q&A for a while, if it's all right with the moderators. The next panel will not be in here. There will not be another panel in here for the 12:15 sessions. If you want more information of that, you have to go outside. So Q&A will continue.
So, what are the opportunities? I mean, again, this is a capital-intensive business. Even the most successful companies are constantly looking for additional capital funding to meet additional capital needs. I think it kind of goes back to one of the things that Anton said about networking, understanding who's in the industry, where they are in the industry, and not everybody, every participant needs funding. Even the larger companies, when I read the market industry reports on a monthly and quarterly basis, even the largest players have needs for capital to expand. So basically anybody with a license needs money.
That's right.
We're taking questions in order. This lady is next, and then we're going to move over to that side. So if you want, please set up a line if you have a question, and we'll take them that way.
Hello, can a small business apply for the social equity loans?
Can a small business?
So the question is, can a small business apply for a social equity loan? Again, I just want to clarify, you can only apply for the social equity cannabis loan if you are a social equity applicant and if you're applying for a license. So if you're not applying for a license, you wouldn't be able to apply for a loan.